Should we get started?
Yeah.
Okay. Good morning and a warm welcome to everyone. Thank you, everyone who joined us for this event. I'm extremely delighted to be your host and address you all. I hope all of you have already started with your problem statements. We are looking forward to witness your innovative design solutions. For today, we have few events aligned for everyone. We have Reimagining Mental Limits with Nikhil Raj from 4 p.m. From 5:45 to 6:30, we will have AMA with our F1 leaders where they will answer all your questions. From 6:30 to 7, there is Sarva's Got Talent, where all the participants can come up and showcase their talent. And to end our day, we have a relaxing music event for all of you. Hope to see you all there. Today we have with us Mr. Shashank Deshpande, renowned design leader, to deliver the keynote speech followed by Q&A. We have shared the link in the chat where you can post your questions. Now, I would like to request Mr. Shalaka Dike, our UX director, to welcome Mr. Shashank Deshpande.
Yeah. Thank you, Shivam. It's my pleasure and honor to welcome our keynote speaker, Mr. Shashank Deshpande, to Sarva'22. A product designer, entrepreneur, and investor with more than 30 years of experience in managing and building design-led businesses, Shashank is the co-founder and chief business officer of Cubyts. Cubyts is a design ops platform that helps designers, design ops managers, and design leaders manage and scale their design function. Shashank is also the managing partner at Pentathlon Ventures. Earlier, Shashank was the chief design officer at Globant. He co-founded Claris Technologies, which Globant acquired in 2015. He has institutionalized design functions in multiple companies like Siemens Information Systems, Veritas, Globant, and HFI. Before that, he had set up a digital design consulting company, Cubyts Design, that was acquired by Frontier Software and Veritas. He's a chartered member of TIE and a member of ACM and SIGCAI. He's also the founder director of the HCI Professionals Association of India, HCI PAI. Shashank holds a degree in mechanical engineering and master's in industrial design from the National Institute of Design, Ahmedabad. Thank you very much, Shashank, for embracing Sarva 2022 and joining us today to inspire Sarva participants in their journey. Welcome, Shashank.
Thanks, Shalaka, and thanks, Shivam. It's really my pleasure to talk at the Sarva Designathon. Thanks for the invitation. What I'll do is I'll share my slides. Just one second. Can everyone see my slides? Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. So thanks, folks. Good morning, everyone. I mean, it's very rare that, on a Saturday morning at 10 a.m., folks are joining to attend sessions on design. So really appreciate you folks joining us. And what I'm going to do is I'll try and keep it as interactive as possible. I would really encourage, like Shivam said, ask questions on the chat or send some Q&A so that I can make it as interactive as possible. But I'm going to talk about one of the topic that's very close to my heart of, how business and design can come together. And I believe that's really what is required for design function to get as close to its spotlight as possible. And my journey, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. Of course, Shalak has given you an overview, but I'd like to sort of start with my my journey and how it has been. So it kind of I'm using a metaphor of how it went from forming, storming, norming, and then performing. Um, but let me give you give you a glimpse of how it kind of started very early. So I was one of the first students at NID way back in '92, where I got very interested in how design and design principles can be applied to digital products. Now I'm talking about digital products today. Back then, there were no laptops, there were no even PCs were sort of very little rare. Of course, this was the era where it was a pre-mobile phone. So when we and design was called by all different names. So some people would call it HCI, some people would call it MMI. So these are very early days of how design is getting accepted in India as well as outside in the international scenario as well. So I started working with. I set up my own small consulting company, and I was working with several big organizations like TCS, Infosys. The community was very small, and I don't really think that people understood what design can bring to the business. But those days, who were when we had a very small community of maybe less than 50 odd people, and the only value that I believe we bought was we asked some very smart questions. And what are these questions? Like, hey, who's your user? What is this? What is the task that you're going to do? What is the scenario here? So these are some very very basic questions that stump many people, and most of the engineers never thought of thinking of user. They're mostly focused on features. Also back then, no one talked about HCI as a subject. The closest was cognitive ergonomics. So because I got into business and building business, whatever the rest of my career, some of the fundamental foundation got built of how we can bring design and business together during those early days. Uh, Moving on, the second stint was where my small little consulting company got acquired by uh, Frontier Software and Veritas, and then that was a time where I sort of started building a team for a multinational company. This was an era about post Y2K, so we saw some really steady growth in companies that were adopting design, some basic design principles, some basic design practices, I would say. And I think most of us back then were doing nice wireframes, and I think that's the only value that that we brought to the community. And slowly, different roles started emerging. Even very early days, I think a designer would do everything. You would do visual design, you would do research, you would do wireframes, everything. But slowly it started saying, okay, hey, we need a visual designer, or we need a researcher, or we need a person who can do some high-level design, low-level design. So some of the roles started emerging during those days. Uh, and then I would say that I transitioned from Veritas Semantic to start my own company called Claris, and by then the roles had really become very very specialized. Now you would go and hire a researcher, you would go and hire a visual designer, you would go and hire a information architect or a lead designer or a UI designer. So this is a time frame when and this sort of time coincided very well with the launch of iPhone and iPads. And earlier, my almost 15-18 years of my career, I had to do a lot of selling of design. But post 2007, when iPhone and iPad was launched, I never had to do any selling. And when people started talking about design thinking, and then everything was design thinking. That so people would just talk about, hey, how can you apply design thinking to pretty much everything. So I would say that Steve Jobs did a stellar job of communicating the value of design through just the awesome products that he launched. And this was the golden time for designers. So the community grew very, very rapidly. We saw some hyper growth. Consumerization, digitization were key drivers, and everyone asking, okay, hey, how can we create wow designs like the way the Apple does. Um, Post that, I would say that this is the stage we are right now, where you are now performing. The community has become very, very big, and if you look at the other way of measuring things, we'll be having about 6 or 7 design-focused conferences in the country. Okay, that's really, really amazing. I mean, back even 5 or 6 years back, we would have hardly 1 or 2 conferences focused on on design or design-related things. And now companies are asking. I mean, if you look at any startup, or if you talk to any startup today, everything starts with design. So I think the first hires that people do these days is that, okay, hey, how can I get a designer on board? How can I get someone who can help me create some very initial designs, or also can I get some early feedback from the customers? So that's a huge change that I'm seeing. That every company, every startup that we are launching here in India is looking at very design seriously, and getting started with design first, as they say. So now, this is a time where everything is happening at a scale. If you look at just the LinkedIn jobs, and if you look at open positions for designers on LinkedIn, has grown 10x since I would say 2019. So in last 3 or 4 years, we've seen, and earlier about 1,000, 2,000 jobs would show up on LinkedIn, but now close to about 20,000 open positions there for require. So I think it's really now performing. So we have traversed a journey of how things have moved from forming, storming, norming to really now performing. And I think it's up to us now how can we take it and move it forward. So how have things evolved in last 25 years? Yeah, I mean, if I really look at it, there's enough evidence that suggests that HCI has contributed positively to revenue growth, profits, brand recognition, or customer loyalty. And if you look at a cross section of publicly listed companies, um, uh, like Apple or Herman Miller or IBM or Nike or Intuit, and close to about 21 more companies, you will see that they have done 200 times better, or twice better than their peers. So which is really, really an amazing statistics. The other stat, which is very other data point, which is very interesting for me, is the ratio of designers to developers. If you look at it, it has moved really from 1:1,000 or 1:2,000 to now about 1:5 or 1:9. I mean, every company, and some of them I've listed here, be it IBM or be it LinkedIn or Uber or Atlassian, all of them are hiring designers and bringing the ratio to about 1:5, which is phenomenal. I mean, I wouldn't have expected this many years back. Even at Claris Technologies, the company that I started, which was at the intersection of design and technology, we had a ratio of about 1:3. So for every 3 developers, we had 1 designer. And we were still short-staffed. I mean, we were still hiring. So it's sort of done amazingly well. The other interesting piece is that if you look at how things have evolved in last close to 25, 30 years now, is that from some features or some parts to the whole product, to the entire portfolio of products, to almost everything that happens in every initiative that happens in a company, I think there is a good journey that many companies have done. And there is a data point that I have, at about 70% of the companies are increasing their from some to whole to entire to almost everything in an organization. So and there's that gives me a lot of confidence that things are. However, if you look at I mean, with all this sort of positive thing, there is still a huge challenge, right? I mean, we still meet a lot of resistance. Like the proverbial iceberg, I'd say, are still very skin deep, right? I mean, not really made much of impact, much of dent in our work. many businesses still look at it as a very surface level thing. They're not. There's very little appreciation of design in um, from businesses, and requests are mostly tactical. Saying, okay, we want to just do something which is either as a post thought or never, never strategic in that sense. Uh, and there are always challenges of people wanting to invest in this function, this thing. I mean, they might at the most hire one designer or two designer, but going um, going that extra mile is still a challenge for many of the businesses. Um, so we are surrounded with a lot of really beautiful and sexy looking products, and we do have seen the benefits of digitalization all across. But there's still a lot of things that are left. Design is still rare in many companies. We we are either part of engineering or we're part of product management. We don't have our own space there. Um, so all the success stories that we see in this thing, but they're also not so great stories, and we all know them and we've all experienced them in life. So I started thinking, where is the problem? And this goes back to my initial days of trying to bring design and business together. I believe that the challenge is getting the design and business alignment. I think we've done enough work to uh, do what I typically call as very design specific things. It's like doing things beautiful, doing things the same. But have we really communicated the value that we? And what is missing is the alignment with business goals or business vision. There's also collaboration that's completely missing. We haven't really demonstrated that we can govern ourselves very well, and that whole aspect of governance is still missing. And most importantly, we have never measured ourselves. We never made ourselves accountable, saying, okay, hey, we are at level 2 and we need to move to level 3 and beyond that. So those are the huge challenges that I've seen. That once we as designers start speaking the language that businesses understand, once we start making ourselves aligned to some of the goals, once we start collaborating with other functions, once we build a better governance model, and once we become accountable and measurable, I think that's where the real change will happen. And just to sort of put across a model of how this could happen is that we sort of, if you look at the businesses and design, come from two different planets, right? We care about empathy. We look at very creative aspects. We also embrace ambiguity. We are also people who continuously experiment, and we kind of like to make and do. Continuous experimentation is our focus. Whereas if you look at businesses, they're very growth focused. Okay. They're also very linear and analytical in thinking as compared to more empathetic or more creative thinking. They also like clarity, unlike we sort of are comfortable in a little bit of a gray world. They like clarity and they like transparency. Also, most business managers that I've seen are very risk averse, very goal oriented, and very metrics driven. Okay. Now, what can we do to sort of align ourselves with this metrics? And one of my first sort of mantras to people is that, okay, hey, you need to spend a good amount of time to understand business strategy. And let me give you one or two examples. These are a little from the businesses that we know very well. So if you look at Amazon and compare themselves with Walmart or Costco, I think the entire business focuses on how can you bring in money before even you make a sale, right? So what Amazon does is, so they have a negative cash conversion cycle. So before the goods reach you, they have already collected the money. Unlike let's say if you go to any real mart, and there are examples that I'm taking from the international market like Costco or Walmart. But so if you look at, there was this whole cash on delivery kind of model that India had this thing, right? Now that model had a very inherent problem, which Amazon never went for cash on delivery, right? Because they knew that okay, if you cannot collect cash before you go to the customers, there's always going to be pressure on the margins and on revenues and other things. So I think it's important that as a designer, we really understand what it means to align to some of these business strategies or business goals. Right? Everything that Amazon does is very focused on saying, okay, hey, how can I collect money before I spend? Yeah. And every organization, every function, or every department of the organization is sort of aligned to this goal, including design. Let me give you another example. When I was at Globant, we started working with a bank. This is part of the Santander Bank. The name of the bank was called Open Bank, and they created the first digital bank in out of Europe. I mean, it started out of Spain, but eventually was positioned to be across Europe. Now, when they started looking for CXOs, they didn't hire people from the banking industry. Okay, they hired people from places like Disney. So they got their chief design officer from Disney, and they got their chief executive officer from Amazon, so who understood the retail business, and then the whole strategy was built around how can you create a completely new experience like the way Disney offers it to the customers, or how Amazon offers it to the customers. So I think that's the kind of thinking that's required, where when you're creating a new experiences, or when you're creating how can we make things which are more aligned to the business goal of saying, okay, hey, I want to create a banking experience, but the business and the strategy has to align to more consumerized businesses. I think that's the thinking that's required, and that's the thinking that I'm seeing more and more popular. So it's not sufficient that, of course, you'll need to have your core skill sets. Like, you should be able to do all the research, you should be able to do all the design work, you should be able to do all the work that's required to evaluate the software. But it's also very, very important to understand, saying, okay, hey, what is the business that we have, and how can we support that business goal or that business strategy? Yeah. So now let me kind of slightly look at how if you have to have that business strategy or a business focus, how can you build your career path? And typically, I sort of talk about these two axes. One is the people dimension, and the other is the technical people and technical dimension, and other one is like a business and the operations dimension. Now, if you are as an individual young designer, once you move from, let's say, being a junior designer to a senior designer to a lead designer, I think at some point you come up with a choice saying, okay, hey, what is the career path that I need to do? And this sort of is the framework for saying, okay, hey, I can take a people dimension where I move from being a lead to a manager, and then manage people, manage projects, manage initiatives, etc. Then there could be a technical dimension. Say, okay, I move on the technical path to being an architect or being a chief design officer and things like that. There's also a business aspect where I can, from being a lead, I can become a product manager, and to a business manager, to a CXO. And I think we've seen some designers have made the transition from being architects or being lead designers to business side, and then eventually becoming CXOs. But the dimension that I'm interested in, I want to talk about it, is the operations dimension. And this is the thing where you can move from being like a lead designer to saying, okay, let me focus on the operational aspects of the thing. And what are those operational aspects? Let me very quickly talk about those operational aspects. So I borrowed this from the NN group. So if you look at it, it's like how we work together. Essentially talking about how we collaborate and organize, how we get work done, how can we standardize and manage, and how our work creates impact. So we need people who can orchestrate this whole thing. right? How we work together, how we get work done, and how our work creates impact. And some of this is internal, but some of this is also external facing, right? And some of this could be very tactical of saying, okay, hey, maybe I need to collaborate better, I need to organize better, but it's also very strategic in some sense because I need to measure something, I need to communicate that measure. So I think this dimension is becoming very important as we go. So it's no longer how well we create designs, but it's also how we communicate with each other, how we standardize things, how we communicate things is becoming critical. And so it's at the core, it's design, which designers typically do. And I'm using design here in a very generic manner. It could be a researcher, it could be a tester, it could be UX writer, it could be a ethnographic researcher. But there are a lot of other tasks that are required, which are involved in managing processes, managing governance. And when I was talking about that alignment between business and design, I think there are several pieces there, right? There is governance, there is maturity, there is business alignment. All that, as a designers, we typically would do it, but someone having that focus is going to be very important. Okay, so I believe that if you have to get the business and design together, focusing on what is missing can help you get that alignment much better and much faster. And I've just created this list of things. It could be about estimating efforts, planning projects, tracking progress, etc., etc. And why you think that's important? It's we've seen, and I talked a little bit about the scale that we've seen, and this is the statistics that we've got from Forrester, that design is growing at a 20% CAGR year on year. So today at $160, $170 billion. By 2026, it'll be close to about $400 billion. So we're talking about massive scale that's going to happen in almost every organization, every company. I believe that even your organization or wherever you're working, either at F1 Studios or others, will see a massive scale. There's literally going to be a 10x demand that happened in last few years. I see a similar demand in the next few years as well. So how can we manage this goal? How can we get better to do a good job of on scaling the design function? The other challenge that we've seen is that many of us have started adopting tools that are not native to us. So if you look at either Jira or Trello or Asana or Basecamp, many of us have started using that, but these tools are not designed or not suited for the design work, because we are more activity and workflow focused. We are more experience focused. We are driven by design metrics, not by engineering or dev matrices. So there's a need that hey, how can we have tools that are very, very specific and very focused on the way we work, which is very workflow oriented, which is very experience oriented, and which is very focused on design matrices. The other challenge that we've seen is that over a period of time, every function has created their own silos, right? Engineering has, either will work with Jira or Asana or Trello, so they have their own way of working. Product managers will use a product board or AHA, and they manage it. However, if you look at design, there is no such tool that's available. We only have tools that will help us create things. There's a Figma, or there's a Sketch, or there is a thing. But what is a tool that will allow us to collaborate with either the product management or engineering is completely missing. Yeah, and that's a big piece where we sometimes just share Figma files with product managers or engineering managers, and they just don't know where to go and what to look for and what to do. And that's the reason why handshakes are becoming very, very laborious. We have long meetings where we just sharing artifacts and having discussions on that, which could have been done in a digital manner much more efficiently. And the most important of all is that over a period of last 8-10 years, there are hundreds of tools that have gotten built. So there we have seen sketching tools, we have seen some design systems, we have seen some project management tools, research tools, insights management. So this tool set is growing, and none of them talk to each other. None of them really really collaborate with each other. Yeah. So that's that's another huge challenge that we've seen. So what we've done is, and this is sort of uh, the challenge that we had, saying, okay, hey, how can we build a design tech platform that will help us codify and scale the design function? And what I mean by that is that how can we be more efficient? Okay, by setting up our own design ops, where I define my design programs, I manage my team health, I can monitor my business alignment. How can I do a better job of speeding my design? How can I improve the speed? By how can I define design processes? How can I map the right people with the right competencies? How can I capture the collaboration in one place? Is it possible that I can bring in consistency by creating a common repository? So everything stays in one location. It's no longer distributed in Google Files or Dropbox or emails or Slack channels, etc. So how can I have everything in one? And then and I share and I build my own best practices. How can I ensure that I communicate the design impact by tracking the business goals, measuring against some ROIs, and most importantly also tracking budgets. And then moving on, how can I reduce my risk by saying, okay, hey, how can I ensure that there are validations done, vulnerabilities taken care of, and having a fair amount of compliances in place, and streamlining all the handoffs or handshakes. Yeah. So we thought that there is a need for this kind of a design tech platform, which will help us sort of lead to a higher maturity and create a very, very inclusive design culture. So that's what we end up building, where we could orchestrate the design ops. And this is the platform that we built, where you can move from a design process to design roadmap within minutes. You can create a design repository that will help you increase maturity. And that's the platform that we built together. You are most welcome to kind of look at Cubyts.com, sign up. It's a free tool, and you can use it. Okay, one second. Let me go to the next slide. Yeah. And which are the companies that have adopted these platforms? And I'm just giving you some names. So these are the companies that have adopted, and there are close to about 200 organizations worldwide that are using it. So you're most welcome to try it out. It's free for 2 months, and then if you continue to use it, then you pay some small subscription fees. But any one of you who wants to know more, please connect us on this. And what is the transition that we've seen? So this is I'm not taking the company's name, but if you look at how they were tracking some numbers of team health, and how they were doing strategic project management, how they were promoting collaboration, how they were tracking committed work, so doing some design cadences, communication, etc., etc. And it very clearly has shown a very significant improvement from where they were to in like 7-8 months of this thing. So that's the sort of a positive thing that they've seen in terms of improving their collaboration, improving their team health, improving all the communication that's required. To sort of to close things, I just want to talk about the 3 or 4 aspects that we spend. So as a designer, I believe that everyone should build a business orientation. They should have a good understanding of the business strategy, what it means to align it to the core function of the business. I think it's also very important to become very entrepreneurial within an enterprise. Be it sort of run it like saying, okay, hey, this is my business, and I'll think it like my business. And I think the business orientation will automatically come if you have that entrepreneurial DNA. I talk a lot about demystifying design, because it's been far too long that we've kind of stayed into our own cocoon and kept it very mystic. It's time that you start integrating, start collaborating with other functions. Uh, Make them part of research, make them part of your design, make them part of your stakeholder workshops, make them part of, I mean, everything that you do should be done in a very collaborative manner. And then last but not the least is communicate the value of design through a very effective design ops, collaborate with others and tell them that, okay, hey, this is the value that we bring. So I want to sort of stop here and see if there are any questions, comments. I'll be happy to sort of take questions. Should I stop sharing or can I?
Yes. Yeah. Thank you, Shashank, and thank you, Shalaka. What you shared with us was very insightful and helpful for all of us. Now let's
Thanks.
get started with the Q&A.
Mm-hmm.
If anyone has not posted their questions, please do post your questions in the link given below. We already have some questions.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, I'll go through it.
Mm-hmm.
First question is, how do you see the future of young UX designer in context of AI tools that are coming up in creative areas such as copywriting, images, and now even Figma?
Okay. So I think some of the low-level tasks will be automated. I mean, I don't think that it will replace a designer. So if you are like a very low-end visual designer or someone who's creating visual graphics, so there are multiple tools that have come up. There are a lot of patterns and libraries that Figma has brought in. So I think if you're very focused on doing very tactical tasks, I think that of course will definitely be challenged by these tools that we've seen, like Midjourney or DALL-E or others taking that piece. So you have to move up the value chain. So it's no longer very. I mean, I even today I see a lot of designs that are very pattern oriented, right? So you'll have to move your skill set to do more strategic work rather than tactical work. And that I think is and that has happened, right? I mean, eventually, I mean, let's say for example, 30 years back, I mean, I would do icon design, right? I mean, that I would spend and do icon design. Now, who does icons, right? I mean, there are thousands and millions of libraries that are available. You can just purchase any library and just do, right? I mean, that skill set is completely gone. Or let's say if you want to, so earlier every design was unique in some sense. Their menu structures were different. The way you'd invoke, maybe the primary navigation or the secondary navigation would be very different. Now, I think a lot of that has standardized, right? I mean, you don't need to reinvent the wheel there. I mean, it's already, there are a lot of patterns available. And so then you start focusing on, okay, how can I bring value in maybe the views or the interactions that are there, right? So it has to clearly move the value chain. Earlier, I mean, we never talked about service design, right? We only talked about product design, and then people saw that the product design is getting commoditized. So you clearly move the value chain to saying, okay, how can you build a better service, or how can you do more better service? So it's that kind of thing, right? Eventually, I believe that a lot of interfaces will get commoditized. A lot of interactions will also get commoditized. You have to move up the value chain to see how you can improve the service. How can you look at every digital touch point? How can you make things better for each of those digital touch points? I mean, digital touch points are even physical touch points. I mean, it's not just digital; it's also physical touch points.
And there's another question. How do you approach a topic that is asking questions about non-use of technology? How do you design artifacts?
So the question is, how do you
How do you
design?
approach a topic that is asking for non-use of technology?
Yeah, I mean, I think technology is incidental, right? I mean, let's say for today, I mean, let's say Air India comes to you and says, okay, they want to redesign their travel experience, right? Or let's say even they come with saying, okay, I want to build an app. Let's say just to take an hypothetical. Now you were saying, okay, hey, I mean, there is nothing much to do an app, right? I mean, there are very standard patterns available. Okay, you're saying, okay, hey, how can I improve the entire experience of how people buy tickets, how people um, what's the experience at the counter, what's the experience during check-in, during the flight, and some of these are technology, some of these are non-technology things, right? So it's all about how uh, about that experience, which in some cases may be technology, but in many cases could be non-technology. But increasingly we are living in a software-driven world, right? I mean, um, so I mean, you can escape technology, or you can probably do some things. And I'm sure there'll be always few things that will be outside technology purview, but increasingly software is eating the world. So that is a irreversible journey, I would say. I don't know if I answered that question, but this is.
Okay. What is your perspective on work from home as a UX designer?
No, so I talked about a lot of collaboration and integration as functions, right? I mean, again, it's the best case that everyone likes to work in isolation, right? I mean, so I think that's the biggest problem that I have with designers. I think you have to collaborate. You have to work very closely with technology. You have to work very closely with product management. You have to work very closely with customer success. You have to work very closely with sales. You have to work very closely with marketing, because I think a lot of ideas of how to improve things, and of course, I mean, you have to work with users. So if you can do all that sitting at home, then most welcome. But it is about collaboration, integration, working with different departments to see how design can be uh, deepened, how design can be become more pervasive. I don't think that will happen sitting at home.
Um, what are the biggest blunder design entrepreneurs should avoid when they are practicing?
Uh, it depends on what type of entrepreneur, that design entrepreneur. See, a lot of times people talk about starting mm, starting very design consulting businesses, right? And which is good, and I think there are more and more, because we like all the freedom, we like all this thing. But I think the question that I have for many design entrepreneurs is that, um, again, I'm just making this like a generic comment, but saying, okay, hey, instead of you starting a like yet another studio, I think it makes a lot of sense to be part of a team that is helping build a product or a service or a or a or some endeavor, right? So so that I think is a much better use of design, rather than everyone getting and starting a design studio, right? So if you're thinking of starting a design studio, that will be my advice. Now, if you're thinking of starting a business, then of course, a business which involves different people, I would say that very important, and since also I'm a investor in, and I'm on the board of like a venture fund, I see a lot of people who come with only, like, all product managers come together, all engineering managers who come together. I think you need a good mix of people, and as a founding team, I think you should have a good mix. I think that would be my my uh, my take on that. But yeah, I mean, I'm answering if in a very generic manner. But if there's anything specific that person is looking for, I'll be happy to talk to my. Please reach out on my LinkedIn. I'll be happy to answer very specific questions.
Okay, we have a question. Do you envision the design ops tool to be working in parallel to project management tools, or they
Yeah.
eventually will be merged in near future? with other tools like Jira and PFS?
Yeah. So what has happened is that, and we've done a lot of study on this, and a lot of our time spends on saying, okay, hey, how can we collaborate with Jira? See, Jira is very task issue centric, this thing, right? It's not very workflow centric. Um, um, uh, so the tool that we built, Cubyts, will work very closely with Jira on one end, and a lot of these wireframing tools like Figma or Sketch on the other end, right? So it's kind of bridging that gap. Um, so I do expect that there'll be a seamless mm, uh, flow of information from Cubyts to many of these tools, and from these tools to Cubyts, and that's the vision. Um, However, whether they'll come and become one, uh, I, I I really am not sure, unless Jira decides to change that. Okay, hey, it's no longer an task centric or issue centric kind of a model, but it'll also have a workflow where I say, okay, hey, I mean, I'm building a feature, and that feature is not just a task, right? It's a workflow where I have to go from maybe research to doing some low level design, some high level design, evaluation, and then it's out. So it's that uh, complexity where one is very linear, other is more workflow based.
Okay, we have a question from Shantosh. Do you see design ops evolving as a formal function or
Yeah.
discipline? When do you see that happening? 3 to
So
5 years? Mhm.
so we are synced up into at least there are 100 plus communities, design ops communities across the world, um, and the largest one is close to about 7,000 people. Okay, so there are, and this is one of the and the that that community is sort of the most popular one. But there are also very specific communities, let's say in Australia or in New Zealand or in South Africa or in China, etc. So this is very quickly evolving. So if you do a LinkedIn search of design program managers, they're called DPMs or design ops managers. You'll find close to about 23,000 odd people who have that designation, right? So it's evolving very rapidly. I think people have realized that, okay, hey, and to be very honest, we all do design operations. I mean, design ops word came up much later. I mean, only recently. But all of us have been doing design ops for many years, right? I mean, we do, of course, do the design work, but we also communicate. We also have all the training done, onboarding done, everything that we do. So we would do a lot of design ops work without knowing that it was design ops. So it's just now getting more formalized. And very similar thing happened when DevOps came in, right? I mean, earlier no one had any specific people for DevOps, but suddenly that whole thing say, okay, hey, you need a platform, you need a tool, you need people, you need very specific roles. So that is what we've been seeing as well, and we are seeing levels of that happening. So there are design program managers, design ops managers. There are people who are part of the chief of staff on design programs. So there are a range of roles that are coming up. Um, so it's evolving very fast. Even in India, we have many design ops managers. There are people who have their official title as design ops manager.
Yeah, a question from Dan. How did you maintain quality and retain culture at Claris when it scaled?
Yeah. So I think, I mean, back then it was all purely the kind of talent that we got, and we were able to hire. Um, and of course, we ensured, even if it was an engineering company, or I mean, or we had like a good mix of engineering and design. We always ensured that designers have all the, like, I mean, just to give a simple example, uh, when we hired the first designer, um, he said, and I cannot work on a Microsoft laptop or Intel laptop. He wants a Mac. And this was when we were a very small company, like 15 people company or a 10 people company kind of a thing. So we had to. So all the designers had Mac. Then all the designers would have all the. So there was some aspects of that we ensured that gets in. But yeah, I mean, I would today, if I have to do it, I will probably ensure that I have a very rugged platform like Cubyts to do it, so that everything is standardized, everything is streamlined, everything is it'll help build, and we did build some tools back then as well, but those were very early, and we probably still learning back then. But using a good platform to manage your entire operations can make can create a wonderful culture for your researchers, designers, managers, and I believe it will also help improve the quality of work.
Okay. Yeah. So last question. We have last question. How UX expert can learn business matrices and approach to converge design and business matrices, thus ultimately progress career path into leadership role.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think uh, whenever I go and look at any design team, and I ask one simple question to them, say, okay, what is the business goal, and what does your business want to do? I can tell you that 90% of the time they just don't know what the business goal is. Okay, and or even if you ask some of your own managers today and say, okay, what are we working towards? What do you want to achieve in the next 3 months, 6 months, 1 year? What is it we want to do? Far often, I think people just really don't know. Now, how can you build that? I think we all ask all the questions about the, the company, the users, the domain, maybe also users, customers, segments, um, target groups, etc., etc. Persona scenarios, user stories, but very rarely we ask, okay, hey, what is that business wants us to do, and getting a good handle on that, getting a good sense of that is important. So I think I would say that it's part of the making it maybe like a checklist, or making it like a um, habit that, okay, hey, I need to have a good sense. I need to write it down. I need to say, okay, hey, just to give an example, and again, I don't want to talk too much about the platform that I have, because that will. But when you start a design intervention at Cubyts, I think the first question we'll ask is, okay, where do you want to align yourself? What is the business goal that you want to align? And then second question we ask, okay, how are you going to measure this? Because these days, if you look at any user experience or customer experience metrics, be it time taken, how much time has he spent on the platform, and be it like an app platform or a web, like a mobile app or a web app, how much time has he spent on the platform, how many times has he come on the platform, has he liked something, has he purchased something, has he commented on something, has he done some XYZ work, etc. So whatever you want to check, right? So there is a lot of instrumentation that has happened, and there are tools like Google Analytics or Pendo or CleverTap or Mixpanel. So there are multiple of these platforms that allow you to measure that ROI, whatever is your KPI. Like we're working with one of the medical healthcare companies, and they wanted to track the patient conversion, and we help them. So there are a lot of these matrices that are important, and bringing that orientation is one of the key.
Okay, yeah. Shalaka posted one question. How do you bring entrepreneurial DNA in organization that would bring in business alignment?
Yeah, so I think this is just the line of questioning that I would encourage, right? I mean, say, okay, like we ask when we go and talk about saying, okay, who's your user, who's your customer, what does he want to do, how does he use platform, typically how many types of users there are. So these are the typical questions that we'll ask, right? And when you start the project, similarly, I think we have to have that line of questioning. You say, okay, hey, what's your business? What are you going to do? How are you going to measure it? How are you saying, okay, hey, we'll be successful? Just asking, saying, okay, hey, what would you say as a success metrics, right? I mean, if I do this project and you say, okay, something will help me in the business, or some needle will help move, right? So what is that needle, and where do you want me to move? Where it is right now, and where do you want me to move? And those are the kind of things that are important. And I think if you keep improving on that line of questioning, I think you'll get better at it.
Okay, yeah. So we have received a lot of questions, but yeah, due to time constraints, all your questions will be answered offline. So yeah,
Yeah.
thank
So
you,
I would,
Shashank.
I would encourage people, if they want to have uh, any more sort of insights, any more this thing, please feel free to connect me on LinkedIn. If you very specifically mention about this session, then I'll be happy to connect and talk about it. Yeah. So thanks Shivam, thanks Shalaka. It was a pleasure, and really hope to kind of continue, and best wishes for your rest of the day. Yeah.
Thank you, Shashank.
Thank you, Shashank.
Thanks. Bye.
Yes, so all the participants can get back to your design. We'll see you at 4. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you, Shashank.
Thank you.